Solutions. My name is Tabile Mate. I am the Director for Facilitation, Technology and Innovation, ACI Africa, and it is my honor to be your moderator today. To enhance your webinar experience, I'd like to request from you to ensure that the microphone on your device is switched off. You can also select the language, either English or French, by clicking on the interpretation tab. On your left-hand side, you can see the audio. Please make sure that that icon is switched off. On the right-hand, on the further right, you've got the interpretation. Please switch it on to either English or French, depending on the language of preference. Your questions will be answered at the end of the presentation. During the presentation, you can use the message, the chat icon function to send your questions to the moderator. Lastly, please note that we will be recording this webinar and it is currently being recorded as we speak. The webinar that we are currently watching right now is a webinar on air travel accessibility for passengers with disabilities. Ladies and gentlemen, I once again thank you for joining us in such great numbers at this ACI Africa webinar, dealing with a very important subject in Africa and the rest of the world. The webinar is about air travel accessibility for passengers with disabilities. And I need you to note that in 2024, ICAO celebrated 75 years of adopting Annex 9, which forms part of the standards and recommendation practices on facilitation. As a result, 2024 was termed the Year of Facilitation. Another thing that I would like to bring to your attention is a study that was done by the World Health Organization that found out that even though persons with disabilities constitute the world's largest minority, this number is increasing significantly. Although significant changes have been made in the provision of accessible air travel to persons with disability in air transportation worldwide, the Year of Facilitation demanded that ACI Africa gives this topic renewed attention. ACI Africa, in collaboration with Skywise Solutions, developed a survey to understand the status of air travel accessibility for passengers with disabilities. And from this survey, it was clear that accessibility for passengers with disabilities involves multiple stakeholders and that Africa is lagging behind the world standards. ACI Africa is committed to working with all stakeholders to provide accessible information and to promote the training of professionals and staff working with passengers with disabilities. On these introductory notes and scene setter, allow me to thank Skywise for sponsoring the survey and to introduce the Skywise team that will be sharing the survey findings with you. The Skywise team that are on this webinar is Ms. Everita Stralka. She's a director and trainer at Skywise Solutions, and Mr. Michael Connolly, also a director and trainer at Skywise Solutions. Without further ado, let me give the floor to the Skywise team. Over to you, Ms. Everita.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you very much, ACI Africa, for the cooperation and trust in us to conduct the survey, what we did, and as well, thank you very much for this webinar, when we are willing to share the experience and the knowledge we have gained through the years. I have been working in aviation since 1996. I have worked and in the airport environment and as well in the airline. And when the legislation in the European Union came into force regarding the people with disabilities, I was leading International Airport on this matter. And with a whole team, we established from the scratch everything what was required in the legislation. And that is quite a lot aligning with the ICAO Annex 9. Michael?
Morning, everybody. And again, echo Arita's words. Thank you for allowing us to be here today and to host this webinar. I've been a trainer in various guises for the last 34 years, moving from logistics, health and safety into aviation 13, 14 years ago, where I managed the training standards and compliance for 13 UK and Irish airports. I joined Skywise Solutions and Everita in 2018, and we have worked with UK government, Irish government, Welsh government, some of the Europeans, in order to bring accessibility forward within aviation. One of the reasons we're here today, as Everita has said, is to discuss the findings of the survey, as well as to move forward with where that aligns or doesn't align with ICAO Annex 9 and how we can move forward from there.
Next slide, please. We can, Tabula already mentioned that we are living in a time of the aging population in the world, and that reflects very much as well on that what we are doing with regards to assisted travel. Next slide, please. Here you can see that in the world, the aging population, and specifically people which are older than 60 years, that part is growing quite substantially. And at the same time, there is a very strong correlation in between the age and the disability.
One of the things that we should remember is we're in a global business of aviation. So it's not just about the people within our territories and the ages or conditions. One of the key driving factors for accessibility in aviation is tourism. And in 2024, Africa, the continent, saw a rise of 12% in its international travellers. That brought in 74 million people to the country as tourists. If that continues, the continent itself is going to see a substantial uplift. And the more we move towards making the airports and the airlines accessible to passengers with not only disabilities, but those with reduced mobility, the more passengers will look favourably upon those airports that are moving forward.
Next slide, please. So here we have a summary of the scope of the ICAO Annex 9 facilitation, and especially with regards to the passengers with reduced mobility and passengers with disabilities. So the main and of course the foremost important thing is the non-discrimination. So aviation industry, airlines, airports, or other service providers who are involved in the, let's say, air travel have no right to discriminate the passengers just because of the fact that they do have any type of the disability.
Any services that an airline or an airport offers that is accessible to those without disability or without reduced mobility should be accessible to those people with reduced mobility or that disability. We shouldn't discriminate in any way, shape, or form.
When we talk about the assistance, so airports and airlines must provide assistance for the passengers with disabilities, and that is that each of the stakeholder has their own the field of authority and which one they have to make properly they say accessible, and we will talk about that a little bit later on the upcoming slides more in detail.
One of the key points of Annex 9 is collaboration, and that's between airlines, airports. Within the terminal, we have all of the service providers, all of the contractors, but outside of the terminal as well, we can look at governments, we can look at departments or organisations who support people with disabilities and reduced mobility. That will help us to build a better service across our airports and our airlines.
Next slide, please. So on the left-hand side, you can see the main elements, which are, say, from the airport side and as well from the airline side, which they have to be made accessible for the people with disabilities. We can say that there are three major parts. The one part, the first one would be pre-travel. The middle one is travel itself, the journey itself through the airport and as well the flight. And after that, we have the after the travel, that giving the passengers as well the possibility to provide feedback. Was it good? Was it bad? In the European legislation and as well in the American legislation, it's clearly stated that the airports and the airlines have to give the possibility and rights to provide feedback.
On the right-hand side of the screen, we can see the questions to be addressed. These were covered also within the survey that we performed with the African ACI, and the responses from the airports we'll discuss as we move further through. Some of the important things is the websites for both airlines and airports. This is where passengers will look for the information to decide whether they can or cannot travel. We can do an awful lot of things within the airport environment or the airline environment, but if it's not visible to the passenger, they don't know, and they may either choose not to travel or to go elsewhere. The different types of operational procedures, how we affect the passenger's journey. Can we improve on a procedure? Is the required information, is the required equipment available for the passenger? And that varies. Later on in this presentation, we will look at different types of equipment that you can utilize to assist the passenger moving through the airports, and the type of accessibility and support that the passenger can have on board the aircraft as well after they've completed their journey through the airport. Next slide, please. Thank you. Sometimes things don't go as we plan or as we would like. And over the last few years, there's been some significant stories of discrimination coming from across Africa. And Africa's not on their own in this. This happens all over the world. But to make it relevant, to make it local, we have a passenger in the first, on the top image. A passenger had tried to board an aircraft, but because of his disability and the fact that he was using a wheelchair, aircraft was denied. Boarding was denied. With the KFC, a government department actually closed down the KFC within the airport terminal as a customer who was traveling back to the States on business. He entered that was short and sweet. I'll continue. He entered the KFC with his family and was demanded to exit by by the manager of the KFC. He took the KFC chain to court. It was a franchise, and a government department then decided to close the KFC within the terminal. On the bottom image, we have two stories, both of where passengers have been denied boarding at the airport. And both of these are where passengers have purchased their tickets, booked assistance, done everything that the airline has asked them to do. And when they've arrived at the airport, one passenger was told that their policy says they do not allow wheelchair passengers on board. And the last image is where the passenger, upon arrival at the airport, he was told that disabled passengers are not allowed to fly at night. Therefore, he would have to travel with a different airline on a different day.
So as we don't have slides at the moment in front of us, nevertheless, we can continue. The information on the website, when we made the survey with the airports who participated and they were willing to share the information, it was seen that not all the airports have information about the assisted travel on their website. So, but if that is not, this information is not provided on the website, people will not try to fly to the airport because people want to be sure that the assistance will be there, that the people will be there, that the equipment will be there, but which one they will be boarded or deboarded, especially for the categories of the passengers who need full assistance up to the seat of the aircraft and from the seat of the aircraft, and they can't move themselves. Can we have the next slide, please? Thank you. So as you can see on the right-hand side, these are the responses from the survey. And you see that the proportion of the airports who have information on the website is quite low. So what should be on the website? There is quite a long list. Here on the left-hand side is only, let's say, like a very dense essence of that. So that should be the details about availability of the services I mentioned before, the instructions how to book assistance, because people not always will know, can they book assistance when they are buying a ticket? Probably they have to call up to the airline, probably they have to email the airline, and that all should be clearly stated. As well, including that, there should be information what type of equipment is available at the airport and location of the accessible parkings. Probably the airport has, or probably airport doesn't have, but it is proven that if you write that you have the accessible parking, it is very, very helpful for the passengers to see the pictures, just couple or even one of the pictures, and people will know what they have to look forward to. Availability of the assistance staff and the ground transportation options, and advanced notice requirements for the assistance. Quite a lot of the world's legislation says that you can book assistance at least up till 48 hours prior departure time, giving the airport quite enough of the pre-notification that the passenger will have needs to board or deboard the aircraft. Michael?
One of the key things when we talk about website information is obviously we are going to make our websites accessible to those people with certain different types of conditions and disabilities. But with regard to the information itself, it's always important that it's reviewed on a regular basis to ensure that it's up to date. We have examples of airports that have built very, very good websites and then not updated their assistance information, and passengers have tried to get to the airport and found that certain routes, certain information, certain equipment is no longer available.
Next slide, please. So there is example of one of the European airports. This is IANA. They are the group of the, let's say, airport managing body who owns quite a lot of the airports. This is from the Alicante airport. So there is a clearly sections clear for the passenger to whom the assistance applies, how to book assistant, and what happens at the airport. Next slide, please. And
this is
here on the other,
sorry,
so this is on the other side, the airline's website showing, again, step by step, what passengers should know. If they're traveling with the mobility aid, what type of the information they have to provide prior to flying, or what about the online check-in, what about other things. So it is clear and specific. The next slide, please.
When we talk about quality standards, every airport should have on their website a list of the quality standards that they have used that is essentially a promise to the passenger of the service or the level of service that they can expect to receive. It's important that not only is this built in agreement and with the partnership of other stakeholders within the airport environment, but that everybody understands what their part is within this structure. It helps us then to build on a correct and proper service for the passenger. The airport understands what services are available and when. The passenger understands how to access. Staff are given the correct training in order to meet these standards. We can ensure that we've got the correct equipment for the standards and to meet the recommendations. And it helps us to monitor the quality of the service and then provide, when the passenger has feedback, which can be both good or bad, it helps us to provide responses built on this standard where we can analyse the differences between the standard and the experience and provide the passengers with a response. The image here is an example taken from Hamburg Airport, and the link is just below the image. Rita?
So yeah, in that, if you open a link, you will see, let's say, step-by-step good things which should be in such the quality standard of the assisted travel at your airport, which is, as Michael said, agreed from all stakeholders, importantly playing in that assistance, I would say, activity. Next slide, please. So once you, as an airport, together with the stakeholders, have created the standard, how you will provide assistance, in this case, the next step would be to create a standard operational procedures. So, but then it goes very much detailed, and that is something that will not, the passenger will not see, but that is your internal operations backbone, I would say. So when we ask in a survey, do you have the standard operational procedures about assisted travel or PRM assistance? You see that quite a lot of the airports, they do have these procedures in place, and that's absolutely great. So that just depends, are they all the elements covered? That's on the left-hand side, you can say who provides assistance. Is that the ground handling staff? Is that the airport staff? Is that the third party, probably? And how we provide assistance. When we talk about the how provide assistance, that should be detailed, even including that how we lift and transfer the passenger, all the lifting techniques and so on. So further on, that can be where the passenger's assistance start. Do you assist the passenger from the car park? Do you assist the passenger from the information desk? Or do you start to assist the passenger from the check-in desk? All these small things is, let's say, part of the standard operational procedure.
One of the key things is, do we allow the passenger freedom of choice? Part of that is, have we chosen originally the correct equipment? Is the equipment based on the recommendation that allows a passenger to move themselves independently around the airport within that chair? So is it self-mobilizing? We find at airports that utilize the correct recommended equipment that their assistance requests are slightly lower for those passengers who can self-mobilize, because the passenger wants independence. Many passengers don't want to ask for help, they need help. But if we give them the ability to move themselves through the airport environment, they will take us up on it. How we communicate with the passenger, how do we give the information to and get the information from?
Next slide,
and
please.
I was just going to mention who's actually responsible for the equipment. It is common where there is a crossover. The airport may purchase the equipment because it's better. We can afford to have better equipment and depreciate over a longer period of time. But then the provider, the service provider, will actually use the equipment. Next slide, please.
Michael?
Training requirements. When we look at training, it's not just looking at the training for those people who will actually provide the assistance to the passenger. We need to look at the airport environment as a whole. Check-in staff are often the first person or people that the passenger may encounter. They'll enter the airport, go to check in their luggage, and at that point, they'll either request or confirm assistance. But check-in staff need to understand the correct, not only the codes, but the definitions of the codes to ensure that the passenger has the right type of assistance booked. That code will then be sent to the PRM assistance provider, and that department will then provide the assistance according to the code. However, we always recommend that the passenger is also asked by the staff, how can we help? The PRM assistance staff need to have very in-depth training, and that covers disability awareness, the manual handling techniques, and that includes not only how to move the passenger's luggage or suitcase with regards to manual handling, but how to lift and transfer a passenger, taking into account all of the possible conditions that the passenger may have. It also includes the base operations of the assistance equipment. How do we use the tools that we have with us, ranging from a chair to an ambulift to a transfer board? We also then look at the airport and airline and ground handling staff. They require basic disability awareness training. They need to know how to interact with passengers based on the information or the interaction that they have. Security staff must be trained in disability awareness, because they need to understand that if they interact with a passenger incorrectly, for example, a passenger who may have autism or another non-visible disability, there's a difference in communication, which will not only assist the passenger, but it will make security flow easier. There will be less disruptions. This all of the training then helps us to perform and to provide a good and proper service to the passenger. But we do our utmost to allow the passenger to have a dignified journey through our airports.
One thing that I wanted to add here on the security, the world has already given quite a lot of the best practices. It is good as well that in security area, there are seats, so the passenger who need to take off the shoes can sit down afterwards and put them on, or as well, like a wooden cane. If the passenger has their own cane or the crutch, they can't go through the arch. So in this case, you provide a wooden one with which one passenger can stabilize themselves, and that's going to be easier as well for all parts involved. When you see the results of the survey, as you can see there, that's the PRM staff lifting techniques. That is something what is not sufficiently trained out. But it is important not only for the passenger to feel the comfort and to be safe, it is heavily important for your staff members. So they are not going on a sickness leave, because the incorrect lifting techniques can lead to the hernias, and that your staff member can be out of the operations for quite a long time. The next slide, please. When we talk about the assisted travel equipment, so this is the very interesting field, because there is a variety of different type of the equipment to be used inside the terminal and as well on an apron. On the survey, quite a lot of the airports responded they do have ambulift or the high loader, and some of them as well, they have the boarding ramps and the stair climbers. Already saying that what we always say in our trainings and consultancies, that stair climbers is not the safest and comfortable way for the passengers to be boarded or deboarded. So when we talk about the airport inside equipment, we need to have not only the standard wheelchair, self-propelled with the big wheels, but we in these times need to have as well the XXL wheelchair to accommodate passengers on the larger side. So more and more people in the world, unfortunately, we can see that passengers quite frequently are of a larger size, and that's why we timely need to purchase the equipment which will help us and as well make the journey for the passenger more comfortable. We will show in the next slide the types of the boarding chairs, because these are needed to be safe and for the operations and for the passenger. And we'll take a look on the alternative methods and supportive devices for the lifting. Michael?
When we discuss self-mobilizing chairs, it's important that it's not only a wheelchair that has the large wheels, but it's also a wheelchair that has the rim on the wheel for the passenger to hold with their hands so they're not pushing on the tyres. Some airports will purchase large wheelchairs without the rims. Passengers still cannot use them on their own. No. Next slide, please. Thank you. Moving from the top right, we have what is a recommended standard chair. When we look at these particular chairs, you'll notice that it has a very high handle. It has an extension handle to the back. This is to make the job of moving the passenger more comfortable for the staff member. They're not stooping over. It has extend leg rests, so that if the passenger has a broken leg, for example, or what we would call a leg extension, which means that they cannot bend at the knee, we can adjust the foot plate on this chair and the leg itself, raise it up on the left or the right hand side. It has the large wheels. It has the metal rim within the wheel to assist the passenger to move themselves. The picture below that is an XXL chair. Similar design. It doesn't have the leg extensions or the extended handle, but this is to allow the larger passenger to be more comfortably transported around the airport. When we look at the two middle images, these are both boarding chairs or deboarding chairs, narrow aisle chairs. And it's important that these meet a certain specification. Most chairs are delivered with a headrest. Some are not, however. And a headrest is an important piece of equipment within these chairs. Sometimes if a passenger cannot stabilize themselves or maintain their upper body stability or above the neck, the headrest allows the passenger to rest their head without it falling off somewhat to the side. When we look at both of the chairs, there are multiple straps, and these all have purposes in order to allow us to securely have the passenger seated in the chair and safely. We look at the last row of images, and we have two images. One is of a ProMove sling. ProMove sling is a very lightweight piece of material that folds around the passenger. There are some conditions that we cannot do a manual lift. If a passenger, for example, has brittle bone disease, we don't want to provide a manual lift to that passenger. We have a very high risk of causing a serious injury. So using a ProMove, this distributes the weight and the pressure across the entire body from the back of the shoulders all the way down to the back of the knees for the passenger. They're very simple to operate, and as with all lifting of a passenger, they will require a minimum of 2 people. The bottom image on the far right is the Easy Glide. It's a transfer or slide board. These are utilised for when a passenger has their own upper body strength. They may have a paralysis from the waist down, but they have the upper body strength in order to slide themselves or move themselves across the seat, and placing this under them across the seats helps them to move that little bit easier. So some of these equipment and some of the other equipment that is available on the market helps the passenger to move themselves. Again, that minimises the amount of risk, not only to the passenger, but importantly to your staff.
Before we move further, I do agree. I see there's a couple of the comments in the chat and saying that the manual 9984 is, let's say, giving the at the moment very clear description what should be and what shouldn't be when it talks about the 193 countries in the world. Yes, this information we have extracted, and that is part of the presentation. And when we talk about the American Access Act, quite a lot of the good information is there, and as well the very good information you will find in your European Civil Aviation Conference website when you go about the Doc 30, but it's about everything about the assisted travel. There you can find a lot of the practical insights and how to create the procedures at your airport. The next slide, please. 1 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 please.
When we have equipment that we are going to use to board or deboard a passenger, as you saw from the previous response, many of the airports who responded have high loaders or ambulifts. A high loader or an ambulifts is a specialised piece of equipment designed and built specifically with the movement of people in mind. It has tracks within the floor, so we can lock down or tie down and secure wheelchairs, sometimes with the passenger within the wheelchair, so it will have also harnesses for the passenger. These are designed for people. We have seen previously and in the past, this equipment is not available at the airport, and sometimes, unfortunately, those airports are utilising catering trucks. Catering vehicles are not safe, secure, or designed for the movement of people, especially people with various disabilities or stability conditions. Some movement in the wrong place could mean that a passenger falls or topples over, as there are no handrails, no seats, no securing points, and no safety belts. So it's important that when we use the equipment for the transportation of passengers, we use the correct equipment. The other picture that you can see is an AviRamp. AviRamp supply ramps in various sizes, from little ramps called the AviLite, which will serve twin prop engines, right the way up to an AviRamp that will serve the lower deck of the A380. The AviRamp is an all-inclusive piece of equipment. This enables passengers to move themselves, whether they have a disability or not, up and down the ramps. It enables staff to, instead of the requirement for an ambulance, it enables staff to take a wheelchair user right up to the aircraft door and do a transfer at the door into the aisle chair to board. It's much more inclusive, but importantly, one of the good things for the airport and for the airline to know is that trials have shown that this will improve boarding and deboarding times by up to 30%. So not only is it an all-inclusive piece of equipment, but it's a very good equipment when you're thinking about turnaround times. The equipment that we utilise to board and deboard passengers is crucial. And as Everita's mentioned on one of the previous slides, one of the things that isn't popular with passengers are stair climbers. They can cause injuries or a lot of pain to the back of the, to the lower spine of the passenger.
Next slide, please. So about the airport facilities, we are slowly running out of the time, let's say, with the number of slides we have. So we have to, here on the right-hand side, you see the heat map of the results from the survey. And as you can see, quite a lot of the things are already in place by the responses of the airports. The one outstanding one is designated waiting areas for the people with disabilities, because sometimes not always they can go in total passenger flow, and not always they can freely find the seating area for them to wait till the flight, let's say boarding time. So it is very important that the seating areas for the passengers with disabilities are on both sides, the air side and the land side, because if the passenger arrives timely, then they have to wait up till the check-in starts and so on. But you all know already these type of things. So on the next slide, we will have a little bit of more of the visuals about the seating areas, about restroom facilities, about the signage, because the sign, you correctly in a couple of the messages said, we don't have to focus only of people with the reduced mobility, or let's say, which comes from the physical, let's say, limitations, but as well other people, including people with sensory impairments, visual or hearing, people with a wide range of the non-visible disabilities. Can we have our next slide, please? And when we talk about people with vision impairments, so in the middle, you can see as well the example from the airport where they have the signage in the best contrast, which is proven by the scientific means. That would be the yellow and black, and as well play with the sizes of the importance of the message, let's say the exit sign or the taxi, whatever. So they are not exactly the same prevalence, and that's why you have to put the signage in the bigger size. On the first slide, you can see that is a seating area of the London Gatwick Airport just for the people with disabilities and reduced mobility. Down there, you can see the changing rooms, which are meant for the passengers who are almost completely immobile and they need certain premises to change before or after the flight. So for the adults, there's shower, there's a hoist in the ceiling, as you can see, adapted toilet facilities, and so on. Dedicated seating areas at the gate, as you can see there. So the seats are slightly raised because the people who are elderly, they need a higher seats. It is easier for them to sit down and, most importantly, to stand up from those seats. Information desks at the airport just for the people who need assistance. That is a very good practice because then they will not go to the information desk and all the questions what they will need to find out about assisted travel, they can address there and then. Just a very as well small image about the elevators. Sometimes the elevators are quite small, and usually if the passenger are in their own wheelchair, there is no space anymore for the family member or assistance agent to get into the elevator, and that is very much limiting the operations and the speed of the passenger flow from and to. Michael?
I think
Next
you've
slide.
covered it. One of the
Next slide, please. Thank you. So the very, very important thing here to say is whatever that would be, but the passengers who require assistance, as it is stated in Annex 9, so the passengers should not be charged or imposed to the passengers with reduced mobility for the assistance what they receive. There are different type of the approaches in the world. In the US, for example, the airline is financing and responsible for all assistance for the passengers with reduced mobility and disabilities. In Europe, it is by legislation allowed that the airport calculates certain small fee and all departing passengers are paying that in a fund from which one all the assistances will be financed, including the training, all the stuff which are involved in assisting, all the equipment, maintenance, whatever that would be, as far as it is only dedicated for the PRM or assisted travel. I just looked into the one airline which is operating in Africa, and because we needed the internal flights, and when I booked the assistance, that was one of the options was showed. If you need a voucher assistance, the charge was $15. That is not in line with this statement from the ICAO Annex 9. The next slide, please. Michael?
we were
Before we
recently
give
in
a word
Montreal.
to Tabula, yeah.
We were recently in Montreal. Tawla mentioned this at the start of the webinar, and it was a truly historical moment for the reason being that it is the first time that ACI World, IATA, and ICAO all came together in one symposium for one subject, and that was accessibility. As Tabula has mentioned, 2024 was the year of facilitation, and this didn't round off the year, although it was in December. It didn't round off the year of facilitation. What it did was it reminded everybody that we have had the year. There is no reason that this should stop. If anything, this is now a subject that should be driven forward. And for the first
Last
time,
sentence. I'm sorry.
sorry, carry on.
I just wanted to say that the very important thing is that accessibility is a significant part of your organization's sustainability plans. Tabula?
We are aware of the passenger journey being quite challenging for passenger with disabilities. And in order to provide a safe and seamless experience to the segment, it is crucial to understand their challenges and different needs. ACI is able to support our members through different activities and resources, including a program that provide guidelines and access to experts in accessibility, as well as exchange with airport peers to facilitate the learning process and implement efficient processes for continuous improvement. In this slide, we are highlighting the fact that we've got an program that is being run by ACI Africa. This accreditation program is intended to guide airports on planning and implementing accessibility services in an inclusive manner through an outcome-focused assessment. If there's anybody on the call who does need more information on the accreditation program, please reach out to ACI Africa or ACI World to get more information on the program. What is important to highlight as well on the program is that we can see here that we have 36 airports that are accredited, and we've got 16 airports that are in the process of accreditation. But you'll see that Africa is not represented either in the airports that are in progress or the airports that are accredited. So there is a need for the more effort in terms of accessibility within the African region, and that is why we are having this webinar, just to raise awareness within our African region that we need to get accreditation and we need to get access to the guidelines and the training as what Skywise Solutions has indicated. The other element that we also would like to highlight is a guide that has just been released. We are proud to announce the recent launch of our Airport and Accessible Travel, a practical guide. Access is now on the ACI store by using the QR code displayed on the slide. This guide has been developed by the ACI World Facilitation and Services Standing Committee, together with leading accessibility advocacy groups, ACI World training partners, which Skywise Solution is one of, ACI regions, ACI airport managers, and customer-centric consulting. It was made possible with the support of Intervistas Consulting and Amadeus. Building on the previous edition of the ACI World Airports and Persons with Disabilities Handbook, the expanded guideline provides up-to-date best practices for including accessibility features into both new and existing airport facilities. The guide includes practical recommendations, case studies, and strategies for barrier-free design, accessible procedures, and services for passengers with visible and non-visible disabilities, while also focusing on staff training. We'd like to thank you for attending the webinar, both ourselves and our partner, Skywise Solution. I would like again to extend my greatest of gratitude to Skywise Solution for conducting the survey and sharing the results with us in terms of what they found in Africa. I am then going to go into the chat to look at the questions that you have posed, and I'll go through them one by one. I see David there was saying we need to share the presentation. Definitely it will be shared. The other element, I'm just running down the Kahiso is saying US DOT has a Air Carrier Access Act that moves in strides. It articulates requirements for air carriers transporting passengers with disability, inclusive of mental, hearing, physical, and visual and other disabilities. The Act may be a resource to benchmark for seamless customer experience for customers with disabilities. Thank you very much for that comment, Kahiso. The next comment or question, what was the total number of responses to the survey? Everita or Michael, please respond.
I already put that in the response. There were 19 airports which responded for the invitation to provide information. And I wanted as well to add to the previous, the Air Carrier Access Act, that is for the carriers, but I fully agree. There are quite a good of the alignments, what as well can be used as well on the airport side and as well on the airline side. That is a good guidance.
Thank you, Everita. We have a question from Arend Boshoff, and the question is, what are the key advantages and potential challenges of using AVRAMs compared to passenger aid units for boarding and disembarking passengers, particularly in terms of accessibility, safety, and operational efficiency? Over to you, Michael and Everita.
Michael?
Yep. AviRamp is, as I've mentioned, one of the only inclusive boarding and deboarding devices. It enables the airline or the ground handlers to pre-populate the AviRamp with passengers prior to the door opening, which immediately the door opens, we can then start boarding. The same when we're deboarding, all passengers can exit. All of your passengers who may be traveling with young children, instead of having to carry them down the steps, they can walk down a very nice ramp. Safety, there are to date 0 accidents on the AviRamps, and it is now a global piece of equipment. I mentioned the efficiency is increased boarding and deboarding 30%. As a disclaimer, that is done on live aircraft, and passengers were unaware it was a general international flight. They are price-wise, in many cases, about a third of the cost of an Ambulift. Easier to move around. They can be built to suit your environment. Some of them can come with lighting. They are solar powered and diesel, so you can mix and match, or you can choose. They also then come with roofs, depending on some of the hotter countries, they have roofs. Some of the rainier countries, they have roofs. The roof itself can be ordered to have solar panels built into it, so that improves your green sustainability part of the airport as well. All in all, it's a much faster operation than it is with the Ambulifts. Thank you.
The other comment that we get that's from Kagiso is accessibility of other forms of assistance devices is advised by Doc 9984, which is a manual on access to air transport by persons with disabilities. Thank you very much, Kagiso, for the comment. The comment again from Kagiso. It says, thank you, Everita. Please start in the European Act, which provides guidance in the matter. Abdullah, this is a very interesting and educative session. Can we have the slide of the presentation? Definitely you will. Abdullah, you'll get the slides. Eugene is asking a question. What key performance indicators should be used to measure progress in improving accessibility for air travel in Africa? Everita, Michael?
I already said that. In fact, it very much depends also how you create and what is in the airport quality standards about how you provide assistance. But to say that not always that can be only the timing. Did the passenger reach the aircraft on time and you didn't create a delay? This is about the equipment. This is about the quality of assistance and feedback from the passengers. But really, that depends very much how you create your own standard and how you follow your standard.
Thank you, Everita. And then we have a question from Jean-Michael. He says, je voudrais juste vous dire merci beaucoup pour cette formation. Merci beaucoup, Jean. Adamu is saying, well done to the presenters for the insights. And David is saying the same. And we will send out the documents to everybody. Eugene is asking the question, did the survey uncover any cultural or social stigmas that impact air travel for passengers with disabilities in Africa? How can these barriers be addressed through awareness and training? Michael, Everita?
I think that is the training. This is step by step, exactly as every other country in the world has gone through all this process. It is just the time. More you will talk about these things, more openly that will be discussed about. So that is the only way, proven way that you can reduce the stigma. But let's say in the survey, this type of the topic was not addressed.
I can just add, one of the things that does come up from the survey is not a lack or not any stigmas as such, just a lack of knowledge. And as Everita says, that comes from the training. One of the things that was mentioned in Montreal is that when we look at accessibility, and I think Tabla's already mentioned it, that Africa is one of the countries slightly lower on the accessibility with regards to aviation. However, looking at tourism, Africa has some of the most accessible tourist attractions. So if we can get the aviation side accessible through training, through awareness, through knowledge, it's going to be absolutely brilliant. I think that the results of the survey purely just showed a lack of knowledge and understanding. That was it.
Thank you very much, Michael. Jen is asking a question. I'm going to ask Jen that we respond to you after the webinar. So I'm going to skip the question from Jen, and then I'm going to go into the next. Again, Jean, you asked another question around Annex 9. We will respond to you via when we send out the information to you. Those questions will be responded to. And then Amira is saying that the presentation is educative. I believe we will all do our part to improve our services. So Sophie is also asking a question here. I'm going to, again, Sophie, because it's in French, I'm going to ask that we respond to you after the session. It's going to be part and parcel of the packet that we send out to you. And then the question from Arumi is, what profound signages can adequately deliver plain pictorial image to guide the passenger without restriction? Again, every time, Michael?
I do think if that is international type of the signages, they are international standard, and those signages and pictograms are used if that was the question. So we can share those afterwards. What are these type of the signages?
Thank you very much, Everita. I see here Skywise Solution asked the question, what to do when airlines apply additional fees to passengers with reduced mobility?
That was myself. That was the question from Jean-Michael translated.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. Everita, do you want to answer that one?
Respond to it? You want to just respond to it?
So that's if on that question that the response is, then it can be classed, and it can be classed as discrimination of the person with disability, because the main principle to be applied is if any other passenger can reach the aircraft and travel by air, our responsibility is to provide exactly the same opportunity for any passenger, and including passengers with disabilities or reduced mobility.
Thank you very much. The last question, because I think we've run out of time. Can airlines and airport operators require an escort for the disabled person? That's another question. And this is our last question. Everita, Michael?
Yes, it is possible because sometimes after the very long flight, for example, the passenger was not able, on the departure, for example, passenger was able to move and do everything. Upon arrival, their mobility can be heavily reduced by the many influencing factors. So yes, the airline may request.
Thank you very much, everybody, for attending. Please switch on your cameras. Would like to take a group photo. So if everybody can switch on their cameras so that we can take a group photo. We again would like to say thank you. We'd like to say thank you to everybody in attendance. Can please switch on your Thank you very much. Whilst we're switching on our cameras, again, ACI Africa is the International Association of African Airports. It is the voice of African airports and has a prime objective to advance the interests of airports and to promote professional excellence in airport management and operations on the